Welcome back to the build, folks. This is a follow on from the previous video where I was spray painting the roof light. I'm going to be installing that today.
So the reason we chose this roof light was it was the biggest we could get for the van, and wanted to let in as much lighting as possible into the van. So we had decided to put it above the bed. Hopefully she'll get some good views when we're lying in bed, maybe some stars.
So romantic. Yeah, so basically going to be installing it today. A few more features of the roof light. It's got 3 settings, so it can be fully open for when we're in particularly hot countries. It can be on a medium setting, yeah, and it can also just be cracked open. On the interior of the van, there's actually a cover that goes on once your ceiling is installed, which has a bug screen and also a blackout blind for when we sleep. And so I'm going to install this now and take a look.
So the cutout for this roof light was 700mm by 500mm. So I used the centre of the van, measured away at 350 either side and marked the corners. So the width measurement for this roof light was 500mm, and this landed just beside the structural support, as you can see here. So that made it easy for the width measurement. Then used a nail as a hole punch so I get a pre-drilled hole started and pre-drilled the corners. Once the corners were pre-drilled, got up on the roof and used some masking tape to join up the corners. Once the masking tape was on there, got a straight edge and used that to join up the lines between each corner. Then once the lines were joined up, I widened one of the holes in one of the corners and made the cut. Once I'd finished the cut and the cutout was removed, I then placed the roof light in for the first time. Once the roof light was in place, used a pencil to mark on the masking tape where the flange would meet the van. Once that was marked with a pencil, I got a grinder with a steel cutting disc in and made some relief cuts either side of the high point up into the line that I'd just marked. Once I'd finished up making the relief cuts with the grinder, I grabbed a pair of hen's legs and crimped the relief cuts down. I then, as you can see here, removed a strip of the vinyl around the outside of the cut and filed around the edges. Then I put some Sikaflex in the parts that I just crimped and smoothed that over with my finger. For the next part, I used the same 3M electrical putty tape that I used for the Max air fan install. Offered the tape over to the van to get the sizes, then I cut it in half. One side of the tape was used for one side and one for the other. Made sure this was all pressed in nicely so there was no gaps between it. Once I was happy with that, I put the roof light in place and checked to see whether there was any gaps. After I'd done that, I attempted to start painting, but I misjudged the top step of the ladder. Absolutely smashed me head. So I put this in here for a word of warning. When you're working off ladders, make sure you know where the top step is. Just recovering my hair there. I think I had a bit of a bald patch. Once I'd recovered, I used the same pot of rust-proof paint that I'd used from the beginning of the build and just touched up the bare metal. Then I put a continuous bead of Sikaflex 221 around the perimeter of the putty tape. That is on top of the putty tape. Once I'd finished that bead of Sikaflex, I put the roof light in place from inside the van. I then put some weight on the top of the roof light, and from the inside of the cab, the bits where I'm propping up here, they were sagging a little bit, so I used some timber battens just to make sure that that was all pressed together while the Sikaflex cured. Once I'd done that, I let the Sikaflex 2 cure for a couple of hours and then removed the timber battens. I then cut the nozzle of the Sikaflex adhesive to the approximate width of the gap between the flange of the roof light and the van, and I applied Sikaflex 221 around the perimeter and smoothed that off with my finger. Once that was all cured, I came back the next day and I used translucent silicone on the inside. I applied this around the whole perimeter of the roof light, just on the inside of the cut.
So, as I spoke about in the intro, this is the cover that goes on the ceiling once the ceiling's installed on the inside of your van. It has the fly screen on there and also the blackout blind for when you're sleeping. I believe this slot here is for if you have a crank lever system and you want to install that at a later date. So on the back here you've got the installation lugs which clip into what I'm going to show you in a second. These run around the outside, so I'll show you what I've constructed. So this is from the inside of the van, the window. As you can see, the plastic, the inside of the roof light doesn't actually drop below these structural members here, so this is where them lugs, what I've just showed you, actually clip into. So once the ceiling's on, the bit on the inside wouldn't actually reach there. So what I've constructed is just a timber frame. I think you can actually get the extension kits, but I felt like this was just as good an option, and it does actually neaten it all up for cutting your insulation up to as well. So what I've done is made a timber frame. This is 50mm by 22mm dressed timber. I constructed that around the outside. This one here I did have to plane down a little bit because I think there was only between 18 and 20mm gap in there, so I did have to plane that down a little bit. And then basically what I've done is lined these clips up with the corresponding hole, and these screws here are 50mm multi-purpose screws, and then I've just fixed the corresponding holes with small wood screws. So that's all lined up. Don't know whether you can see, as it would be anyway. So just step back. Once the roof is on, that's going to be another 7.5mm. So these clips will be in the right position for
this part here to clip into. So I hope I've explained myself right there. And yeah, that's how I'm going about it. Happy days, peeps.
So that's the Midi Heki Rooflight install complete. Over the moon with how the job's turned out. I do think that it's going to be one of my favourite features of the van once it's all done and dusted. So yeah, when the bed's in there, we're going to be able to stand up in the bed and see out of the window when you're lying on a night time and it's a clear sky. We're going to be able to do a bit of stargazing, so yeah, really happy with that. And yeah, a few things about the build. In hindsight, as you've seen there, I used the timber battens to prop up the sides. What I would have done in hindsight is just made the timber frame straight away, and then basically when the screws go into the corresponding holes, that pulls the roof light into the top of the roof anyway, so you wouldn't have had to use the weight either side, and you're probably going to get a more uniform grip, if you like, from the screws. Just another thing to mention that I didn't mention in that little clip was, before I put that timber framing in, I actually put a thick bead of liquid no nails in there just for an extra seal. And yeah, this is the biggest roof light that I could have found or could find online to fit the Sprinter. As you can see, when the cutout was actually made and the roof lights dropped through the roof, it's right next to the structural member, so it is physically the biggest roof light that you can get in there. Lets in loads of natural light. What else? Yeah, basically I had to make some relief cuts. Not ideal, I didn't really want to do this, but when I made the cutout in the first place and dropped the roof light in, it was just sticking up too proud. It was sticking up nearly 20 millimeters, so I wouldn't have been able to get a good seal on there with the Sikaflex. So once I'd made the relief cuts, crimped the metal and dropped the roof light back in, that had dropped below 10 millimeters, so it allowed me to get a good seal of Sikaflex around the outsides. Apart from that, yeah, that's why I'm making these videos, so I can make the mistakes and you don't have to. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Follow for up and coming videos. The First Fix Electrics is going to be coming soon, and the van is going better than I thought it was going to be. So thanks for watching again. I'll see you next time.